Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to someone somewhere, I'm sure. My name is Salpi Ghazarian. I'm the director of the Institute of Armenian Studies at the University of Southern California. And I'm thankful to the Aurora Prize for inviting me to moderate today's conversation. I've done this moderation now for several years, and I'm both proud and really sorry to say we're still here. We're still doing this. We're still seeking and thanking and supporting the unique human beings who continue to try to save mankind from itself almost, who help their fellow man in the midst of crises and disasters that are really man-made. These conversations do two things simultaneously. On the one hand, they make us wonder about who we are as a species and why we can't do better. And on the other hand, they inspire us, because these humanitarians are categorically, all of them, absolutely inspiring. They inspire us to act. And that's what I hope we get out of today's conversation. The inspiration to, at the very least, think about the issues they, and therefore we, are facing, and to act in whatever capacity we are able to. And I'm hoping they will help us understand what that kind of help is. Before we start, a couple of quick reminders. We're being hosted on the Future Studio Discussions platform, and we're thankful for that. We have access to interpretation in 4 languages if you're on Zoom. The Russian, the French, the English, and Armenian, which is under the Portuguese flag. Don't write Aurora any letters, write letters to Zoom instead. There's no Armenian flag up there yet, but all are available. You're welcome to send questions, and I will try, no promises, I will try to get to them. You can send them on Facebook, you can send them here on Zoom in the Q&A section. For those of your friends and others who you wish were watching, you can tell them all of this will be recorded and available on various platforms, Facebook and others, but certainly on Aurora's YouTube channel as well. Before we start today's conversation, just so you have an idea of the capacity, the need, the issues that we're dealing with, please join me in, that makes sense. We should also mention the availability of translation in these other languages as well, but I'm sure the interpreters are doing that. Before we start today's conversation, please join me in watching 4 short, really short videos about the very special individuals we're honoring today. Welcome to the 2020 conversation with Aurora Humanitarians. Humanitarians is Aurora's way of saying that these aren't finalists, this isn't a contest, but these are the four, well, not individuals, because in this case we have two sets of two individuals, but these are the four entities who have been selected out of 593 nominations that came in during last year in order to bring to the world's attention the God's work that man is doing through our guests today. You see them here on the screen. You saw a little bit about the work that they do, and I'm hoping that during this hour we can understand a little better both the motivations, the challenges, and of course, where we come in. I will introduce them again in alphabetical order and ask the first questions in alphabetical order, and then we'll mix it up. You met Sophie Beau. She's co-founder of SOS Méditerranée, a European organization for the rescue of lives at sea. One thinks that in the 21st century, one shouldn't have to have an organization called that, but there we are. The other co-founder, Klaus Vogel, is not able to join us today. Sophie, you're an anthropologist. Now you're a sailor, you're a fundraiser, you're an advocate. Welcome, and who are you? What do you do?
Thank you very much. Well, I am a humanitarian worker, and at the moment I'm dedicating my time completely to this European Rescue Association to rescue the thousands of people that are in danger at sea, crossing for a better future, crossing the Mediterranean from the Libyan shores and fleeing the very, very difficult country of Libya, where they are facing horrific conditions. So they are putting their lives in danger at sea, and we have chartered a ship. It was the Aquarius, now it's a new ship, it's the Ocean Viking, to rescue them, actually.
And the Ocean Viking is now today functional? It's on the seas?
The Ocean Viking is today not functional because after we had to stop 3 months due to the COVID-19 crisis. Then we resumed operations in June, and we rescued another 181 persons. Then we, after that, had to quarantine both people rescued on board and our ship and our team because of the crisis, COVID-19, and the sanitary measures of protection. And then the Italian state decided to detain our ship, the Ocean Viking, just as 3 other humanitarian ships have been detained since April after the resumption of operations after the sanitary crisis. So all humanitarian ships are being blocked, the one after the other, by states. I mean, I'm sure we are going to talk about it more, but it's a very complicated situation where states should take the responsibility to rescue people and are failing to do so. This is exactly the reason why we had to create SOS Méditerranée, and other civil rescue associations were funded as well, because there is a failure of states today in the Mediterranean to rescue thousands of people in danger.
So when you say you rescue people at sea, you are in the middle of the sea, not at port, and you see a human being in the water.
Exactly. We are patrolling in the international waters of the Libyan shores, because the central Mediterranean is today the deadliest migratory route in the world. So therefore we are patrolling over there, knowing that there are very often boats that are trying to escape from Libya, that are trying to reach Europe, and they just cannot make the crossing because it's much too far away. It's more than 400 kilometers. It is not possible to reach the shores with such tiny, unseaworthy boats. So people are desperate, and they're putting their lives in danger to flee the Libyan hell, what they call the Libyan hell, where they are imprisoned, tortured, victims of very, very serious abuses in detention camps, official or not official, and subject to a very intense human trafficking. So they prefer to put their life in danger, crossing the sea, rather than staying in these conditions. And therefore, there are still today lots of boats that are departing from the Libyan shores, trying to reach safety.
Thank you. We will, of course, come back to all of this. Ilwad Elman, who together with her mother Fartun Adan is co-founder of the Elman Peace and Human Rights Center in Somalia. The center is named for Ilwad's father. And although Fartun Adan is not here, Ilwad is. Ilwad, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
With pleasure. Ilwad, you lost your father. You lost your sister. Does this work that you and your mother do, does it hurt? Is it a daily reminder? Does it help? Is it a cure? How are your personal losses and the losses that you see around you, how do they connect for you in your work?
The work that we do is extremely emotional, whether it's your own personal trauma that you carry, or if it's secondary trauma that you inherit from the people that you meet that enter our centers arguably at the most vulnerable, most destitute point of their lives. It's not something that you can just put aside on the shelf after you clock out for the day. So
Ilwad, can you raise your volume just a little bit?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Better.
I was saying that the work that we do is incredibly emotionally charged, whether it's your own personal trauma by virtue of being in the conflict zone and having to suffer grave losses like the ones that my family has, or whether it's the trauma that you carry secondarily from people that you work with, people that you touch, that you see. There's no time in which you can clock out of the emotional attachments to the work that we're doing. So it's emotional, it's fueled by a deep understanding for the suffering. The reason why we are based in Mogadishu and doing our work in the field, sharing the same hardships and insecurities as the people that we serve, has allowed us to also see through the lens of others, even though we may not have experienced the same kind of suffering.
You're in Mogadishu now?
I'm in Mogadishu now. And I mean, I think the philosophy that my family and I carry is that we've lost so much in pursuit of human rights, human dignity, and safety for all, is that we're so far in that the only way out is to keep going in. And to think about losing my sister, I wouldn't be able to continue to do the work if I wasn't seeing people that every day have suffered like me and are resilient and are still seeing beauty in life. And that gives me strength as well too, gives me inspiration, and knowing that you're not alone in this and trying to heal together. There's some sort of comfort in that.
I'm going to go to the other humanitarians and come back to you, but I have to ask, although you're in Mogadishu, you sound like a North American. Tell us how that happened.
Well, I was born in Somalia, and when the war worsened, like millions of others, I went through the refugee route. I didn't have to take the perilous Mediterranean Sea like the people that Sophie encounters in her work, but I did spend some time in Kenya in a refugee camp, and finally my family got asylum in Canada, and I returned to Somalia to see the role I have in the transition of conflict in 2010. So I've been here ever since.
Thank you. Sister Angelique Namaika is co-founder of the Center for Reintegration and Development, and also co-founder of the St. Daniel Comboni Pediatric Clinic, both in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the war has ended, but violence clearly has not. Sister Angelique, welcome. Tell us about role models, about the examples that one follows in one's life. You had a role model, another nun, and that helped lead you to the work that you do?
Souhaite à tous les humanitaires bonne fête de cette journée des humanitaires. Et je remercie encore, je continue à remercier les humanitaires que vous êtes pour ce que vous faites pour nous qui sommes sur terrain. parce qu'il nous arrive des fois à ne pas savoir qu'est-ce qu'on doit faire avec ces femmes, ces enfants traumatisés qui nous arrivent. Subitement, vos temps, vos soucis pour nous encouragent dans l'aide, des débats et de donner solution à ces personnes qui sont des souffrants dans ce monde. Merci encore. Pour ceux qui regardent comment j'ai commencé, il y a un exemple que j'ai suivi pour faire ce que j'ai fait aujourd'hui. Mon exemple, comme j'avais dit auparavant, c'est une religieuse. Elle aidait les personnes malades. Et moi, j'ai vu qu'elle faisait de bonnes choses, mais elle était seule. Moi, j'ai dit, je vais devenir comme elle pour aider les personnes malades. Et après, l'évangile de Jésus-Christ qui m'enseignait que partout il passait, il faisait du bien, il n'avait pas le temps de se reposer. Tout ce qu'on fait à une personne souffrante, c'est à Jésus qu'on fait. C'est ce qui est comme pour moi l'exemple pour faire ce que je suis en train de faire aujourd'hui. Et je me sens vraiment à l'aise. C'est une obligation pour moi quand je n'accomplis pas cela. Quand une personne souffrante est traumatisée, un enfant, un bébé qu'on nous emmène, j'ai le devoir de lui porter le coup de main parce que c'est mon obligatoire, comme j'ai appris du Seigneur. Et de cette religieuse-là qui s'est donnée corps et âme pour venir soutenir les personnes malades.
Thank you. And let me also introduce Dr. Sakena Yacoobi, who is the founder and executive director of the Afghan Institute of Learning. And she herself is a public health expert. Dr. Yacoobi, before you began your work, you achieved the highest levels of education. And I wonder if you would be doing the work that you're doing now in teaching, learning, setting up educational opportunities, if you hadn't benefited from education, higher education. You're on mute, please. Dr. Yacoobi, you're muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
How about now?
Yes,
Hello?
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I just want to tell you a short story. When you are yourself a refugee, and when you live in another country and see the situation, and it makes you to think, what am I doing? Why I am so different from other people? And your heart sort of going after the situation that those people are situated. For example, a woman who sold a daughter for a bag of rice, the daughter who is 11 years old and who is being beaten up because she could not do the chore of the house, or a woman who went to get food for her children, 5 or 6 children in the corner of the house, waiting for the mother to come back. And then the mother never showed up because she was blown up by the bomb outside. And the children are sitting there and waiting for food. Or when you see that somebody and the neighbor are being beaten up because the husband are upset because the husband doesn't have the money or the husband doesn't have the job. These are the issues that it's really create a situation that you are become a humanitarian while you are trying to really fix this problem. And when you see that you don't have a state that will or care for this problem, then you definitely, you want to say, okay, I do the best I could. These are the challenges that I'm facing it, but how much I can help. So, and you think about it, and then there are people are asking me, are you a humanitarian? Are you an activist? I will tell them that I'm a humanitarian, I'm an activist, I'm an educationalist, and also I'm a healthcare worker. Because I really see that these 4 areas are related to each other. And if you really want to get rid of poverty, and if you really want to bring a safe environment for these children, and if you really want to change the civil society to have their dignity, to have their self-confidence, to have their resilience, it means that you have to face all these challenges and tackle them one at a time, but at the same time, all four of them together. And that's the reason I am in this area, and that's what I'm doing.
And where are you now?
Right now, I'm in the United States. I came for the UN meeting. I got stuck here, and because of COVID-19. But sure enough, day and night, I'm working in Afghanistan with COVID-19, trying to reach out. And I am so proud of my staff. Those are the people who are really motivating me. When I see them that they get instruction from me and they go door to door, house to house, provide assistance, provides food, provides humanitarian assistance like sanitation, social distance media. They are doing all kinds of things, healthcare, and trying to reach out for those people while they have no other way. You know, my country is in a conflict zone right now. We have war for 40 years. People of Afghanistan suffer so much. And I just don't know how to tell you how much these people took, you know?
Let me ask you and all of you really the same question, that on the one hand, what you're doing is offering direct help. You know, the term first responder is something we've all been hearing, especially now in the COVID context, you know, the frontline worker, the first responder, which is really what all of you are, which is what you've been doing before COVID. So there's that sort of immediate, urgent, obviously needed help. And then there's systemic change so that you become irrelevant, so that you're all unemployed one day. How much of your effort is or can even be directed to systemic change? Do you have the capacity to do both things? Do you even consider that your mandate? And this is really to all of you. So we'll start with Dr. Yacoobi because we're here, and then we'll go to Ilwad and move on.
Well, first of all, as a humanitarian, as somebody who really believes that what I am doing is impacting life and is changing life, I have hopes, and I really do my best to try to bring the systemic change, because first of all, as a one individual, you could not do that much. But when you have the power of people, when people behind you, and when you gain that power of people, when you work with those people, and when you really try to reach according to their needs, try to respond to them, try to listen to them, and that is the time that you really believe that the future is going to be changed, and these people are going to be changed, and you do not give up. You day after day, you keep doing it. Yes, it's not a short-term moment, it is a long-term, but you are patiently just work toward your goals, and I am sure we will reach out that. And yeah, we see the change. We see tremendous change, especially with our young people.
Thank you. Ilwad, the same question to you, but also, you know, I think it's a little easier for us to understand what a sea rescue mission does or a learning center does. What does a human rights center do?
Well, all of our interventions, all of the services that we provide are informed by the human rights monitoring, documenting, and reporting that we do. So various trends surface, whether it's sexual and gender-based violence, which inspired the first rape crisis center in Somalia that we founded, whether it's rehabilitation and reintegration that we are providing as a service to children and young people that are being co-opted by terrorist organizations. That's a service that we provide, but also through tremendous reports of human rights violations, unlawful arrests, extrajudicial killings, many different things. So we don't only just document and report on the human rights violations and abuses, but provide services. So our key thematic areas are in peace and security, in education, in gender justice, and human rights guides all of the work that we're doing. On your question about institutional change and working on legislation reform, perhaps, our theory of change is grounded on three key principles: individual recovery, so helping victims with services, the first response work that you speak of, whether that's through safe houses that we run, through clinics that we have, through education facilities, job placements, helping individuals that have become victims of various human rights violations and abuses rebuild and reclaim their lives. But then we also take the next pillar of our theory of change is trying to prevent these issues from happening, not only responding, but preventing. And that includes social norms change and challenging traditional harmful behaviors through education, advocacy, awareness raising. And then the final pillar of our theory of change is contributing to policy change, legislative reform, ensuring that there are systems in place and institutions, and particularly empowering women in politics. I'll give you one example. It was 10 years ago that we founded the first rape crisis center in Somalia. At the height of the conflict, when we first founded the center in 2010, we were seeing maybe 25 women a day that had just been raped, or within the 72 hours that were reporting within our facilities. The president at that time held a press conference denying that rape even happens in Somalia. We had our center shut down, we had our staff arrested, and just a mere 10 years now, we were campaigning very strongly for the first sexual offenses bill, which actually criminalizes sexual violence and rape. We didn't even have that in our penal code before. We went from 14% women involved in politics to a huge spike of 26% of women in parliamentarians. We had the first Ministry of Women and Human Rights. So tremendous gains that were made. And that was part of our advocacy and mobilization efforts. But where we are today, which is, I believe, a major setback, an example of also the advocacy and policy change that we work on is the sexual offenses bill we had been working towards nearly 2 years ago that would actually punish rape has been co-opted and switched into a penetration bill. The penetration bill's key articles is on legalizing child marriage. So we are right now working very strongly with members of parliamentarians, Senate, any government official and online petitions that we've also put as well too, that you can see on all of our Elman piece and my personal social media accounts, to try to prevent this bill from happening. We know that we cannot continue to prevent sexual violence and respond to rape and protect girls if the legislation actually allows for child marriage. So everything has to go in hand, not only for us to be unemployed one day, which is the goal, but to have justice, to have repercussions for violators. And it's one and the same. It's all interconnected. And we believe that an ideal scenario in the future will be institutions that are strong enough, that are rights-based, and can hold perpetrators to account. So it all has to fit in together.
Before this conversation is over, you will have to tell us whether those of us not in Somalia can do anything specifically in that regard, for example, something very specific.
Absolutely.
You know, whether
Yes,
there's outside
definitely.
pressure that can do anything, but we'll get to that. For Sophie and then Sister Angelique, please talk about that, about either the complementarity of immediate response and systemic change, or perhaps the opposition, that you can't do both, you need to do one.
Yes, to come back to the foundation of SOS Méditerranée, what we believed and we still believe is that every life which is saved is a message of hope. And you cannot give up. You cannot let people drown in front of your eyes at the doorstep of Europe. And if there is a failure of states to do so, if we as sailors, maritime people, humanitarians can do a little, of course we will not solve the whole problem. We will not be able with one rescue ship to rescue everyone. It's impossible, unfortunately, because there are dozens of thousands of people who have crossed and perished at sea. But if you can do so, if you can make this little difference for one life, you should do it. And I'm very, in a sense, I'm satisfied that we have tried it, because we could prove that there is something to be done at sea. You can rescue these people. So there is an obligation, a moral duty of action, I believe. That's the first thing. And second, by doing so, you can show that there is something to be done. And we try to communicate also on this action to raise citizen awareness, to raise awareness among leaders, among the European states. We try to advocate to find a political solution, because there is definitely something that must be done by states to solve the issue. We are trying to advocate in that direction because frontline countries such as Italy or Greece or Malta or Spain cannot be left alone. And there is a need for more European solidarity. It is the basis of the European Union. It is not put into facts, into action at the moment. And it is a shame. And we as citizens, we are shocked by this, and we cannot remain passive. We can do a difference. We can make this difference. And I believe that it is not enough, but it must be done. It's a moral duty, just as it is also a legal duty to save one person in distress at sea. So I believe that this must be done. It has an exemplary aspect, but let's not forget about these single lives. We have been able to rescue more than 31,000 lives in 4 years of rescues at sea, despite all the obstacles that are put to hinder the humanitarian action of civil ships such as our ships. This has been possible, and it is very important. I will not give up that fight. We will not give up that fight. We are now a big amount of network of citizens that are fighting to uphold also these values that we must not forget, even in Europe today.
I think that what you've all said is a reminder that the humanitarian is not the charity worker, but the advocate as well.
Absolutely.
Of course, charity, but also advocacy. Sister Angelique, you are an example of the kind of humanitarian work that makes clear that just one action is insufficient. You start out with a center for reintegration and development. You add a pediatric clinic, and you create all of the pieces of a whole chain of support mechanisms, which essentially means that just one service by itself is insufficient. So how do you make systemic change? Or do you?
Merci encore. Pour moi, j'ai toujours des succès dans ce travail. Parce que avec Dieu, quand on fait quelque chose, on n'a pas de défaite. Il y a toujours des réussites. En plus de cela, vous, mes frères, les donateurs, les humanitaires de loin, vous m'approchez toujours dans ce travail dans les centres de réinsertion. Je vois beaucoup de changements dans ces femmes, dans ces garçons qui étaient kidnappés, qui rentraient désespérés, ce qu'ils vont encore étudier dans leur vie, en les approchant comme des personnes utiles encore pour la société, à leur donner l'éducation. Je vois un grand changement parce que d'autres ont reçu leur diplôme, d'autres poursuivent encore leur diplôme, leur institut supérieur. Ça me fait un peu de la joie pour les voir. Et des femmes aussi désespérées. Maintenant, elles sont capables de gérer leurs petites entreprises, leurs coutures, ainsi de suite. Elles sont valorisées. Et les enfants, des fois, on nous amène des enfants malnutris, désespérés aussi. Mais quand on voit un enfant à 0 semaine, qu'on parvient à le faire marcher et à commencer à aller à l'école, ça nous fait de la joie. Un enfant qu'on avait reçu le premier jour, qui est aujourd'hui déjà au niveau de 3e année primaire, il y a toujours des succès pour nous. Grâce à Dieu qui nous donne ses forces continuelles et à vous aussi les donateurs qui nous donnent les moyens. Parce qu'au début, c'était difficile pour nous. À chaque moment, on avait des larmes dans nos yeux. Et avec votre soutien, main à main, travail à synergie, nous sommes vraiment avec succès dans le terrain. C'est pour cela que nous avons toujours des nombres de personnes vulnérables et victimes qui s'ajoutent pour cette aide que les autres bénéficient de cela. En tout cas, pour moi, je trouve qu'il y a des succès dans ce travail. Il y a des changements de ces personnes positives.
Thank you. I'm not sure I should wander into this territory, but I'm going to do it anyway. Everyone on camera here is a woman. There wasn't even an effort made at gender parity by inviting a male moderator. So here we all are. And the reality is that decision makers are men, mostly. Perhaps a little bit different in Europe and changing a little bit in Africa, but mostly. To what extent does that complicate your work and the decision making, or does it? Am I making an unfair assumption? Ilwad, maybe we start with you because I think that's possibly the obvious place. And you're muted.
Well, I think that if anything that we've seen during this COVID global pandemic right now is that the leadership of women, the quick response that women leaders have taken around the world in isolating the pandemic, in taking very bold measures such as putting countries on lockdown, the social services that they afforded their people was a demonstration to the capacity of women. And when women lead, they lead with, I think, with strong leadership, but also with compassion for their people. And I think New Zealand is a really good example of that as well too. In Somalia, we've been fighting very long for the role of women in political processes, in their political participation. We have many male allies, but we are in a very strong dictionary, textbook dictionary definition of what patriarchy means. That's what we're facing here right now. But patriarchy does not only end with women as well too. And I hate to be the one to say that, but we are facing that so much right now in Somalia, where we have women in leadership that are not fighting for women. This penetration bill that I discussed, that's legalizing child marriage, the subcommittee that endorsed it was all women parliamentarians. So the role of women in leadership should never just be about quotas. It's not about just having women as seat warmers. It has to be about people that truly believe in plural societies, in equality and equity. And sometimes that's within women, and sometimes it's within men as well too. But I think that with 20 years of celebrating resolutions such as 1325 on the role of women in peace and security, we are no longer asking for, can women lead? Can women solve the seemingly intractable conflicts of the world? Do they have a role and a voice? I think what we're seeing day in and day out, and so well represented by all the women on this panel today, is that even without space, women are leading, and they will continue to.
Thank you. Dr. Yacoobi, are most of your beneficiaries women?
Yes, this is a very interesting. My sister Somalian, she said that I really believe that women are right now in a position of leadership in many countries somehow. In Afghanistan, yeah, you hear that women are changing, the situation are changing in Afghanistan for women, but it's still up to today, the women are not able to do the act that they're supposed to do because the male partner is blocking them, first of all. And second thing, we have a constitution that says women are free and women are equal and gender equality should be absorbed in Afghanistan. But Afghanistan is one of those places that until today, as a matter of fact, just 3 days ago, one of our parliament member, Fawzi Kufi, was shot just going from one place to the next place because they believe that the more they prevent women from being active and the more they are going to be successful. And so as a result, we must continue working with women because women are, as a leader, can do so much, but we have to choose the right women that they are able to stand up, they are able to back up the other women. For example, there are women who are in a higher position and there are another women who are competing for that job or for some other job. Those are the women that stop those women. And we have to stand behind each other. We have to support each other in order to be successful in our position. And gender equality is very important. We are continuously training women in area of leadership, in area of good citizenship, in area of parliamentary, in area of good governance, in area of democracy. We continuously training, and this training must go on if we want to see the success. Otherwise, we will not achieve what we want to. Afghanistan has a long way, but I'm sure all around the world, this is the issue, that women are in the leadership position, but they are not taking their position seriously, or they are people who are not really qualified, skillful in their position. And so we must absorb that. Yeah.
Sophie, are most of your, the 30-some thousand, are most of them, I would imagine, not women?
Yeah, there is a majority of men, but there are also, unfortunately, a huge number of women and children, 25% of children that have been saved in this huge number, about 20% of women. So unfortunately, families are crossing, families that are disparate, and also lonely women that are isolated and submitted to the worst atrocities in Libya, with a systematic use of rape, and very often also human trafficking networks linked to prostitution. So it's a very, very heavy condition for women, even more than for men. Yeah, as for your question, are we, or I am targeted as a woman? No, but we are equally harassed as rescuers, male and female, to prevent us from doing our work, because unfortunately, this humanitarian crisis is used and misused as a political tool between states in Europe, and instrumentalized, politicized, where we believe human lives must be saved first of all, and political considerations must come second. So yeah, there has been equal harassment of all the rescuers, unfortunately, in the last years.
Okay, this is a perfect place to switch gears completely. Violence, especially political violence, is what led, or what was at the basis of, the Armenian genocide. It was not a neighbor deciding they didn't like the neighbor, but it was because a government determined that to solve political problems, extreme violence, annihilation was essential. And so the Aurora Prize, established by the descendants of the survivors, is intended to thank those around the world who do good work to save people at risk, because that's how Armenian survivors survived. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to explain, even to Armenians, why the Aurora Prize does what it does. That is, this small country in the Caucasus has chosen to take on the big ills of the world and to be a part of the solution. Sometimes it's also difficult to explain that to the rest of the world. You know, Armenia has lots of issues that it could be resolving at home. Why is Armenia playing in this big pond? How do you explain to people why you're in the midst of this discussion now and what is happening? What is your explanation for the Aurora Prize and its role in trying to help in the work that you do? Sister Angelique, should we start with you? And I know I've asked a big question, but you know, if we can come up with kind of short answers.
Merci. Je n'ai pas répondu à de quoi, comment les hommes voient notre travail. Je vais commencer par là un peu. Les hommes chez nous, on reconnaît ce que nous faisons parce que les activités naissent du jour au jour à leur présence. Ils n'ont pas vraiment de blocage pour nous. On travaille avec eux. Des fois, si j'ai des blocages pour telle idée ou autre, je demande leur point de vue. Ils m'aident toujours avec. Parce que quand on a quelque chose dans sa tête, un but qu'on poursuit, on doit le faire. Personne ne doit enlever ça parce qu'il ne connaît pas là où tu vas. Et avec leur aide, des questions, des réponses, ils m'aident toujours à aller de l'avant. Et nous travaillons presque à synergie. Pour moi, la parité n'est pas monter au-dessus, mais c'est compléter C'est pour cela que je ne connais pas vraiment beaucoup de difficultés face aux hommes. Je travaille avec beaucoup des hommes, les enseignants sont des hommes, les infirmiers, les docteurs, ainsi de suite, et nous travaillons ensemble avec eux pour le bien-être des vulnérables. Le prix Aurora, pour moi, c'est, comme je dis toujours, c'est une surprise, parce que je ne connaissais pas Aurora. On se connaît par des écrits, par des visages comme je vois là-bas. Ça me fait de plaisir. Vraiment, c'est une force pour moi. Tout ce que j'avais dans la tête, comment faire pour réaliser tout cela, je demandais par-ci, par-là, et un peu de champ, d'autofinancement pour accomplir ce que je voulais vraiment arriver à cela. Mais maintenant, les prix Aurora vient vraiment comme, permettez-moi de le dire d'une façon de notre côté ici, un frère ou une sœur qui vient me visiter chez moi, voir ma réalité, comment est-ce que je vis chaque jour, et me porter coup de main dans mon travail. Ces prix, comme je vous avais dit la fois passée, ça va m'aider à réaliser beaucoup de choses au centre pour les vulnérables.
Dr. Yacoobi.
Yes, I really believe that Aurora Prize is a role model for all of us, because the way that they are reaching out and the way that they are responding to the this big problem of humanitarian that is taking over all the world almost. I think that one thing that with this Aurora we could do so much, because but later we could do just little thing, but with Aurora, which is huge, and then we could do so much, we reach out for the root of the problem. We do not work from the service. What we want to do, we want to really get rid of poverty. We want to get rid of war. We want to be everybody self-sufficient, be everybody able to support themselves, not to back on the street, be able to take care of their health, be able to have a good education, be able to have a good status in life. In order for us to do that, we really need a role model like Aurora Foundation that really look why they are, yeah, as you said, a small country with all their own problem, but they are reaching for this big issue because they believe, they see that how much humans suffer, how much humanity have been in danger and still is in danger. For example, I am just talking about Afghanistan. If we do not get the ignorance of people, if we do not educate people, if we do not change their mind, if we do not teach them critical thinking, if we do not prevent violence against women, if we do not reach out for the children who are in the street, who are poor, who are not getting education, they become a monster, they become somebody who is a bad citizen. If we do not reach for those things, how we could reach humanity? So humanity, that is a human, this is a human's right, this is their right, this is human's right. We need to reach humanity by acting to all these causes that it is affecting humanity today, and the human beings are suffering so much. I don't know how to tell you. When I look at every corner of Afghanistan, right now Afghanistan is in poverty. They are suffering day after day. You know, COVID-19, it come to everybody like unprepared. No country was prepared. But especially for Afghanistan, we were living in poverty, we were living in war, and all of a sudden this things, a monster came. And you know, people didn't believe that this is something that's going to hurt them. People didn't know how to take care of themselves. People don't have a way to go there. And if you tell them social distance, stay home, lockdown, they don't have something to take home. They are line worker. They have to go work and then bring. And when you lock them down, what they are going to do? So these are the issues that I really believe that Aurora Foundation is a foundation, is a work that we look as a role model that they are going to provide for the root of this problem. We need to go to the root. We cannot just work surface. If we go to the root, we need huge support, huge assistance to really try to dig down from the bottom. That's my understanding.
Thank you. And before I ask Sophie and Ilwad for the same, I ask you the same question. let me just say two things. One, that the Aurora Prize, for those who may not know, is a $1 million award that is given with the laureate, the one who is that year's laureate, $900,000 of which goes to organizations that they point to for support, and the $100,000 goes to the laureate individually. So it is, in fact, a significant award. And as people are listening, if you want to nominate someone, nominations for 2021 are already open. And there will be also a special category for COVID because it has changed everyone's lives. And so that's just a reminder that we will, offer again. Sophie, please, the Aurora place in this humanitarian global struggle, how do you explain it?
I find it extremely inspiring that people have turned a huge trauma, an episode of the history of Armenia that has been so horrific, turned into a positive attitude of sharing, of upholding human dignity, and of what I find very striking also is this sense of responsibility towards humanity. It is extremely inspiring to see today that Armenians that have suffered what they have suffered a century ago are able to give back to humanity, a huge sense of responsibility, to motivate donors and to turn into a positive action to support humanitarian work. It's very inspiring. And we share, of course, the refusal to indifference to human suffering. And it is the same human suffering everywhere, whatever the times of history and whatever the place in this world. So
refusal to indifference, that's a good line. I may steal it. That's Ilwad, please. The Aurora connection, you've now been associated with Aurora for several years. How do you explain it?
Well, I mean, on that as well too, we were finalists in 2017, when I think already is useful for people to know that's unique about Aurora is that you don't just celebrate humanitarians as a one-off, but I really feel like my mom and I have been in the fold of this family, this community, since 2017, not only just when we are up for recognition from Aurora, but constantly celebrating our work throughout those years we've known each other, amplifying our advocacy calls, connecting us to different people that could be useful for our fight. So that alone is, I think, the first significant difference between Aurora from other initiatives. And like you mentioned, I mean, everyone has mess in their own backyard, but to be able to see that you can do two things at once, and that you can't wait for a perfect country, a perfect society, completely developed before you start thinking about what can I do for people that are less off or worse off than me. I think that's very admirable. What I particularly am quite fond about is with Aurora, it inspires paying it forward. Like you mentioned, there's the people that survived the Armenian genocide is of the grace of other people. People putting that responsibility on themselves, helping each other. If you have little, still breaking that so that more people can share. And that philosophy is also really interesting in how you are awarding this prize, because I know, or I believe, most people operate from a place of positivity. Most people want to change the world. They want to help other people. But doing good is also really difficult. I think all of us in this chat right now can attest to how hard it is to try to help other people, how hard it is to raise funds, to develop 40-page proposals for a concept that's for other people. And some people become disillusioned or they become passive and they just think, okay, well, at least there's people like Sophie and Sakena and Angelique who will do this work. And because they've just had so many barriers. I see this within my age group so much. Young people want to change the world. They know that they have the power to, but the bureaucracy and the limitations of actually being able to get their ideas funded to do good work, it's really challenging. So the opportunity to not only be recognized in this distinguished group of people for the work my mother and I are doing in Somalia, but to also invest in action that is impactful with other organizations, other like-minded people, I think it's really paying it forward. And the organizations that I had the opportunity with my mother and I to nominate are people that have the same moral compass as I and the same ethos as us. And I know that with our recognition, if they can get funding to continue their good work, that's the ultimate goal. So I think that we can't wait for every society to be free and fair and rights-based. We got to do what we can with what we have now. And I think that's the opportunity that Aurora provides.
We can do two things at once, you said.
Yeah.
We're hitting the hour mark, but I don't want to end without asking a couple of questions. One about COVID and its impact on your work. And I would imagine most people assume it's a negative impact, but I wonder if there are any silver linings in this, the fact that COVID is a global disaster and not a specific one. And of course, what can people do? Money is an obvious answer, but perhaps it needs to be stressed. Aurora itself functions on donations, but beyond that, what is it that I sitting at home can do, even if I do not have the courage that you have? What can I do in order to make some difference? Let's quickly talk about COVID, please, and then we'll end with the call to action to everyone who is and will be watching. Sister Angelique, let's start with you. Has COVID completely hurt your work, or possibly has it helped a little bit? You're on mute, please. Unmute yourself.
Je disais que ce qui a été positif pour le coronavirus, je ne sais pas, c'est penser aux autres. Parce que tout ce qu'on a écouté dans le monde, c'était terrible. Ça nous a donné le temps pour savoir penser aux autres et approcher les autres de loin dans nos prières qui ont subi vraiment ces atrocités-là, je peux dire, de coronavirus. Et ça nous a donné aussi le temps de travailler ensemble avec d'autres personnes pour encourager les faibles qui étaient désespérés de cette situation-là. Par exemple, pour nous, avec les femmes, on a aidé beaucoup les personnes qui ne savaient pas quoi faire. Avec le peu de courage que Dieu nous a donné pour savoir franchir ces barrières-là de coronavirus, on a essayé de fabriquer beaucoup de masques parce que personne ne savait comment fabriquer ces masques pour les élèves. Et maintenant, tout le monde doit participer à la messe avec des masques. Ce sont les femmes qui fournissent cela avec leur courage. Comme négatif, ça a arrêté beaucoup des activités de nous-mêmes. Et les enfants ont fait presque 5 mois à la maison sans cours. Et on regrette leur sort. On va recommencer encore avec courage, comme on vient d'ouvrir. On respecte les mesures barrières pour continuer toujours de l'avant. Parce qu'il y a quand même l'espoir de vivre avec tout ce que les hommes de science, les hommes se sont mobilisés pour chercher comment arrêter cette évolution. Et on voit quand même l'impact et les pollutions.
Thank you very much.
Nous disons merci à toutes les
Sister
personnes.
Angelique, let's move on. Thank you. Thank you. I apologize. Let's move on because I want to come back to you and ask you again about how people can help. Sophie, COVID out in the middle of the sea. Just very briefly, the positives. I keep saying positives, hoping there are some.
I can't see them really. I'm trying to look for them, but no, we have been really heavily impacted by COVID-19 crisis because the Mediterranean has been paralyzed. Ports have closed their doors. Borders have been closed. Relocation agreements for rescued people have stopped between states, and this is why it has been so difficult since then to have a political solution with Italy and Malta, which are in front line. Plus, we had to adapt our ship to prevent the boarding of COVID-19 on board, because if you have the outbreak on board, you can't operate anymore. It's a disaster. And we had to equip, and it was really, really heavy, the impact on the preparation of our last rotation at sea, with all the preventive measures, preventive quarantine for the rescuers, 14 days before getting on board, equipment, decontamination location on board the ship for the rescued people, etc., etc. So it has been very, very difficult, and it still is very difficult. And unfortunately, what I must say at the moment is that COVID-19 is becoming a pretext for European states to not fulfill their obligation and to put more obstacles to rescue at sea at the moment. I don't see really the positive sides of it at the moment.
Thank you. I thought I would try. Dr. Yacoobi, very briefly, please, the impact of COVID.
Well, the impact of COVID has been very, seriously affected our program because of the situation that the people of Afghanistan are in. But then you were looking for a positive. I want to just share positive things with you. Through this COVID-19, I come up to really understand that people are everywhere. They have a heart, and they really, when they are putting in a situation that they really have no choice, they really wake up and they look for each other welfare, especially in their health situation. Right now in Afghanistan, I see that the people who never lifted their finger before, all of a sudden they are on the street, they are trying to reach out, they are trying to do whatever they could and to help each other. That is, for me, is also encouraging. It's really inspired me. And yeah, in AOL, we have a very serious issue. We have to go door to door, as I told you. We are not only giving a humanitarian such as food, we are providing food, we are providing clothing, we are providing shelter, we are providing also our clinic. As you know, we have 6 clinics, we have a hospital. Constantly our hospital and clinic is running and double shift, triple shift. And also we have to adapt our program because we are also educational program, and we are in a country that we don't have technology that much. And so trying to really shift the educational system to a sort of to a distance education, or to try to really create a package for them to not be really missed out of in school. It has been a challenging, and but at the same time, I am so proud of the staff, so proud of the people that they are really working non-stop, and that is something that it's really also inspired me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ilwad, I'm going to ask you to respond to COVID, but then also pick up and tell us, in your concluding words, what it is that we can do sitting where we are.
Sure. I mean, the positive in COVID, like everyone has mentioned, is very, very hard to see, but maybe what it proved for us here in Somalia is that working in emergency in a conflict zone, the only constant is change. We are constantly changing how we work and being agile and restructuring, and maybe the world now is also learning of how to completely restructure your entire way of working when a pandemic like this has hit. So we have had minimal impact to our programming because we've always been kind of robust like that, and to be able to see that our operations can withstand a pandemic has been reassuring of our institutional capacity, if that's a positive. For an action, I mean, I believe a humanitarian is not just someone who's connected to an organization or a foundation, but anyone who is compassionate, anyone who actually informs themselves and cares about the plight of other people suffering and wants to do something, any small action. So a small action that everyone that's listening into this chat today can do is to help us in Somalia prevent legalization of child marriage. There's a petition that I hope the Aurora family will also share, but is on my social media links. And just adding your voice to this petition will really help us and showing that this is not okay, that children as young as 8 and 9 do not deserve to be married, but should be in school.
Thank you. Thank you, but for many reasons, specifically because you mix the big ask with the very small and specific ask. Thank you very much. Sister Angelique, your last words during this conversation at least, and specifically a very short call to us. What is it that we can do? Money, of course. What else?
Pas l'argent, c'est d'abord le courage. Le courage fait beaucoup de choses. Même si on est seul, on doit commencer. Dieu ne nous abandonnera pas. Il nous associera des personnes pour nous aider dans ce travail. Il faut du courage et fermer les oreilles à tous les gens dit les paroles décourageantes et continuer notre travail. On peut faire plus encore. L'amour peut faire plus de ce qu'on veut faire.
Yes, you and Marguerite Barankitse, the first laureate. Marguerite, whatever question you ask her, the answer comes back to love. Thank you. Dr. Yacoobi, your parting words, please. What can we do? Inspire us, make us act.
Well, I really believe that really do from your heart. Listen to your heart and act from your heart. This is one thing that I really believe that is really going to affect. And the second thing, I think that publicity, like sharing information, in sharing website, in sharing program information, I really think that that's also helpful because people do not know what you are doing, what is their need, what is people really are looking for. So if you share that, that would be good. Of course, money is something that, as you said, that is, money is the first thing that when you have money, you can reach out. But if you don't, then you cannot. So my point is that publicity, sharing, and also make sure that give love and compassion. That is the issue that I live with it. That's every day with my life. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do. Sophie, Beau, you are at the front line of a very unusual, odd human need. Something that on the one hand, we can possibly see most specifically compared to our colleagues and friends here. On the other hand, something that we possibly can't relate to. The idea of jumping into a sea because you have no other option of saving yourself. Your parting words, please. How you do what you do, how you overcome the obstacles you overcome, and what is your message to us?
I think the lesson that is learned here is that we can make something together at our level. If we cannot solve all problems, we can make a difference if we united, build something, build an action that can prove to be efficient. So in the case of SOS Méditerranée, chartering a ship has been done just because thousands of citizens have come together to give money, a little bit, everyone, because we are only funded by private people, by citizens. And you can make this difference all together. This is the lesson that I learned from this experience. What would say to inspire people, please share the story of our mission, share the story of these very courageous people, because they are the ones who are the heroes, the ones who are doing the crossing. They are so courageous to save their lives. And if you live in one of the countries where we have an association, you can also join the volunteers. We are basing ourselves on the citizens' mobilization. So it's only in Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and France, unfortunately. But please try to join us because we cannot accept today to see this disaster in front of us and remain indifferent. It's impossible. It's not acceptable. So together, we say always together for rescue, but for rescue, not only at sea, we can do a lot in all these different places. That would be my word. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, both for your words and again for what you do. I want to remind people again that nominations for the 2021 Aurora Prize are open. They're on the Aurora Prize website, and with COVID in mind especially. I obviously want to thank you all for your words, for your actions, and I kind of want to say the obvious, and that is that as Armenians, we, in speaking about the genocide, our, if not our first or second sentence, our third sentence usually is, and the world just stopped and stood by and watched. That is, one of the things we say most frequently about our grandparents and great-grandparents' stories. And so what you are saying to us is we shouldn't be that guy. We shouldn't be that person who just stood by and watched. And Aurora gives us the opportunity to do much more. Not as much as you're doing, but to do more. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to the participants. This conversation will be posted on Aurora's Facebook, on Aurora's YouTube, and we hope that you will share it in order to share the messages of these incredible humanitarians, Sister Angelique, Namaika, Sophie, Beau, Sakena, Yacoobi, and Ilwad, Elman. Thank you again for following Aurora Prize.